to Z Mysteries, Super Edition 4, Sleepy Hollow Sleepover by Ron Roy. Chapter 7. What cabins are you kids in? Officer Sneak asked. 15 minutes later, they were deep in woods that Dink didn't recognize. We're in Witch's Hut, Candy said from the back seat. It's so cool. We found snakes in the bathtub. It's lame, Andy said. I knew they were rubber. Yeah? Then why did you scream? Adam asked. I never screamed, Andy said. Did too, Candy piped up. Our cabin is haunted house, Ruth Rose told Officer Sneak. Good, that's just a mile up the road, the officer said. I'll drop you off first. A few minutes later, Officer Sneak pulled up to the haunted house cabin. Here you go, kids. Have a good sleep, he said. Dink, Josh, and Ruth Rose hopped out of the cruiser. The front porch light was on, but the cabin itself was totally dark. Good night, you guys, Candy said. Maybe we'll see you back in town tomorrow. The kids all said good night, and Officer Sneak pulled away into the black woods. Your dad must be asleep, Ruth Rose said quietly. The kids walked up onto the porch. The book that Dink's father had been reading earlier was on the chair, opened. A glass of lemonade stood on the table. It was more than half full. Ice cubes floated in the liquid. He told me he'd wait up till we got back, Dink said. He opened the front door. It squeaked, sounding like a scared mouse. Dad, we're home. No one answered. The cabin was dark, except for glowing coals in the fireplace. Dink switched on a lamp. The kids blinked when the bright light hit their eyes. The ticking of the mantel clock was the only sound. It was almost midnight. Look, Josh said. He pointed to their sleeping bags. They had been unrolled and lined up near each other on the floor. 3 white pillows lay on top of the bags. Chocolate candies, shaped like small ghosts, had been placed on each pillow. Your dad is so cool, Dink, Ruth Rose said. But where is he? Dink asked. Dad, are you here? The answer was a slamming door. The kids whipped around to see the one they'd just come through. Not that door, Ruth Rose whispered. She pointed in front of them to the closed bedroom door. The noise came from in there. Dink took a deep breath, then slowly opened the bedroom door. Come on, Dad, he said. Stop messing around. We know it's Halloween. Dink reached into the dark room and flipped the wall switch. The light showed a chair, dresser, and a bed. The blankets were in a heap on the floor. Dink stepped into the room, and the others followed. Okay, this is creeping me out, Josh said. Listen, Dink said. At first, they heard nothing but their own breathing. Then a low howling filled the room. It got louder, sounding like a hungry wolf. This was followed by scratching fingernails on dry wood. Ruth Rose giggled. This is like a scary movie, she whispered to Josh, then raised her voice. Something is behind that door. Dink gave Josh a little shove. Open the closet door, Josh, he said. There might be Halloween candy in there. I wouldn't open that door for all the candy on the planet, Josh said. I'm starting to hate Halloween. Dink laughed, then walked across the room and yanked open the closet door. A figure draped in a white sheet hopped out. Boo, Dink's father said, pulling the sheet away from his face. Hi, Dad, Dink said. Nice costume. It was all I could come up with at the last minute, his father said. He dropped the sheet onto his bed. Sorry if I scared you. We weren't scared, Josh said. Ha, Ruth Rose said. Your face was wider than the sheet. Okay, we all need to get to sleep, Dink's father said. But first, I want to hear about your night. Taking turns, the kids told Dink's father what had happened, starting with the bats and witch and ghoul in the woods. Dink's father listened as he made up his bed. When they got to the part about the burning wagons, he sat on the bed. "That's so strange," he said. "Well, I'm sure the police will figure it out tomorrow. Okay, pajamas and toothbrushing. I'm sure you all ate a lot of candy." "Josh did," Dink said. "Did you know he can stuff 17 marshmallows in his mouth at once?" "Amazing, Josh," Mr. Duncan said. "I'd love to see that." "Anytime, Mr. Duncan," Josh said. 20 minutes later, the kids were in their sleeping bags. Josh and Ruth Rose were asleep. Dink lay awake, listening to crickets outside the cabin. Dink rolled over in his sleeping bag and looked out the window. Josh had gobbled up his chocolate ghost, but Dink and Ruth Rose had decided to save theirs. The two miniature ghosts stood on the windowsill. The light from the moon created two ghost shadows on the floor. Dink wondered for the 100th time who had set the fires. Was it the officer in the spaceman costume? Had those lights come from the heels of his sneakers? There had been 2 men near the wagons just before they burned. Who was the second man? "Maybe I should tell Officer Clever about the sneaker lights tomorrow," Dink said to himself as he snuggled into the sleeping bag. Then his eyes popped open. But what if the second man was another cop? What if the other man was Officer Clever?